Matt Schulte and Chris Beckenbaugh. We are live and local right here in Lincoln today. It's been a very, very exciting news day with the Mueller Report going on. And so in a few minutes here, we're going to be joined by Congressman Jeff Fortenberry. He's going to give us his take on a few of the topics that are going on that the House of Representatives has been dealing with. They've had quite an exciting last couple weeks. Last week, they were lit up by a Trump tweet storm where he was directly calling out a few colleagues of Congressman Fortenberry. We've got the Mueller report, the conversations that are happening today being rehashed. And then as well, I know the congressman has been involved in some of the other activity related to Iraq, and there's confirmation today that came out of Nebraska. So we hope to ask Congressman Fortenberry about all four of those topics when he joins us on the line here in just a minute.
But Matt, you also made some news.
That's true.
Matt, my co-anchor here on Drive Time Lincoln, was quoted in CNN. On CNN, of all places.
I did. Actually, I got interviewed last week by CNN, by Fox News, by a number of national media sources. We had the controversy around the serving hands where someone claimed that one of them looked like devil hands, and it just went viral. It just lit up nationwide. I never expected to be interviewed by CNN, and for sure, or Fox News even for that matter. I think it was just on their online reports, but even today I was interviewed by Channel 3 out of Omaha. So.
Well, very cool. And speaking of newsmakers, we have our Congressman Jeff Fortenberry online. Welcome, Congressman.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, we're a pleasure to have you. Got Chris Beckenbaugh and Matt Schulte here, and there's been a little bit of activity up there at the House this last couple weeks, huh?
Well, I would say so. That's a bit of an understatement. Chris and Matt, do you both have new jobs? I didn't know I was going to be on with Chris. How are you, Chris?
I am well, sir. Thanks for being here with us today, bringing a little class to the show.
Well, that's a very generous statement. No, there was quite a bit of drama on Capitol Hill today, and understandably so. We've gone through almost a 2-year process of an investigation of a sitting president, and frankly, the investigation was necessary because we needed to find out the extent to which Russia attempted to influence our last presidential election. So it was a thorough investigation. In fact, there was a vote in the House of Representatives, and it was a bipartisan vote to continue with the investigation a while back because many of us believed that was important. But the outcome is also important. It was found that there was no collusion with the Russians. The legal standard is conspiracy. There was no conspiracy with the Russians. So there's two parts to what's called the Mueller Report, who is the special counsel. Volume 1 goes into that set of facts and concludes clearly there is no collusion or conspiracy. So there's no underlying crime. Volume 2 goes into the exercise of actually doing the investigation and how it caught some people in lies. This today was about whether or not the standard for a crime called obstruction of justice was actually met. And so you had Democrats on the committee hearing, and I'm not on the committee of jurisdiction, but I did go observe this for about an hour, walked through a series of facts that pointed to the president possibly obstructing justice. Republicans took the tack that the whole underlying foundation of this investigation was actually corrupted because of a bad document, a political document that was used in a court system that really began this entire investigation and was in the hands of a bad, biased FBI agent. And so that was the drama unfolding.
Wow,
and so you can read the second part either way, but again, the drama today was those two perspectives at work.
It just gives you goosebumps to think that those kind of things are going on here in our nation.
Can I just ask you a question? Was there, in general, the reports coming out of the conversation today is that there's no new news. He just kept reiterating what was in the report. Is that the take on Capitol Hill as well?
Well, I think everybody is unpacking actually what just happened. So I don't know if there's a consistent narrative that is developed yet, except for this one. the special counsel Robert Mueller, who has served the country honorably as a Marine and as the director of FBI. There's no question about his character, but he looked very feeble today, tired, and almost like a figurehead, indicating that he may have not had the full hand in writing this report. It was a bit of a strange sight, if you will, sometimes even confused. So that was, I think, a major takeaway. The actual debate between Republicans and Democrats was somewhat predictable because it's tactical. But look, Volume 1, this is a two-part report. Volume 1 clears the president of any underlying crime. Volume 2 is about the obstruction of justice in the events that took place around the investigation. And there's things in that volume that do make you win. Yet the argument about obstruction would be more persuasive if there was an underlying crime and if the investigation had been impeded, and that didn't happen. There's also another argument that, hey, the president, he's got a reactive personality. I think you all know that by now. I think, and he's trying to find people around him who will help him proclaim his innocence. So these are some of the dynamics at play here.
You know, as I was watching that today, I first of all, I'd agree with your sentiments that at times he appeared unprepared or not quite ready to answer. But, man, I also had sympathy for the guy as I looked and I thought, who wants to be interviewed by a group of people who nobody's excited about and everybody's wanting to tear apart in front of millions and millions of watchers? So I had a little sympathy for him out there today.
Yeah, it was tough to watch him just say, you know, I refer you to what's already in the report, and, you know, I'm not going to get into that. Yeah. Seemed to be kind of a repetitive answer. Or could you repeat the question?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, I'm used to being on what's called the dais, sitting above people, and obviously these things are designed to exhibit power, to look down upon witnesses. It can be intimidating if you're sitting down there. I actually was sitting fairly close to him, behind him, because I was a guest of the committee. But, yeah, it's 50 to 60 to 1, and for hours after hours. In fact, I did talk to one Republican who grilled him intensely, and he said he felt sorry for him.
Is that how many people are on that committee, 50 to 60 people?
Well, that's a guess.
Sure, that's fine.
There were two separate hearings, so I don't know if that's an accurate number, but it's a reasonable approximation.
Sure. Wow.
And it's a 500-page report.
Yeah.
And so to be able to recall every line has just got to be exhausting.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely exhausting, and so there is an understandable sympathy effect in that regard. But the counter to that, the paradox, though, is that Robert Mueller is a well-known public figure. He's been in Washington and been in the midst of very difficult things for a very long time. So he has a magnanimous stature, and he looks magnanimous. And again, he fought in Vietnam, and he spent his life in public service. So there's uniform respect for what he's done previous to this. So the expectation of him being in full command and full control, I think, was seriously unmet because, again, he was tired, exhausted, sometimes confused, and my words are feeble.
Mm-hmm.
Any understanding of why that might have been the case today?
I have no idea, other than maybe this work of 2 years has taken its toll on the man. The other point here may be that, again, this is all speculation on my part, so I don't want to go too deep into this, but again, maybe his role as director of the investigation was more of that, a director, rather than having an in-depth hand in it. So it was very hard for him on the spot to recall exactly on what page and where, since he didn't have an intimate grasp of the writing, or the intimate grasp of the fullness of the details, because he didn't use his own hand to craft it. I don't know. That's speculation.
Sure. Well, we got a couple other topics we'd like to talk with you more about. This Matt Schulte and Chris Beckenbaugh. We've got Congressman Jeff Fortenberry on the line. Real quick before we go to a break, would you care to comment at all on Bryan Bisher being confirmed to the federal bench today?
This morning we had the Nebraska breakfast in Washington, and if I can use your platform to advertise a little bit.
Sure.
The Nebraska breakfast is a very long tradition going back to World War II. Senator Hugh Butler from Nebraska started it, and we've been doing it every year since. And anybody who's in town on a Wednesday morning, as long as Congress is in session, is welcome to come. Sometimes we just have tourists from other states stumble in there and sit down, and they're welcome too. But this is mainly a Nebraska breakfast. We don't serve any food, but it's around breakfast time. And what it is an opportunity for Nebraskans just to stand up, see the whole delegation, see all 5 of us, say what they're doing there. People who are with associations come, families on vacations come. I talked at length to the FFA group from Western Nebraska. It's just a lot of fun and interesting. The point being is Senator Fisher announced that Bisher was confirmed by the Senate today, and I just burst out, about time. Because,
I couldn't agree more, Congressman. This has taken far too long and for the wrong reasons.
Well, exactly the wrong reasons. The man's character was questioned because of the affiliations of his faith tradition. The fact that he was in the Knights of Columbus, which is a very old charitable institution that does tremendous work for the poor and expectant mothers. To question his character simply for belonging to that organization, it shows you how skewed the country has gotten, particularly in these types of hearings. I think that was quickly recognized as a mistake, and Schumer stopped that in the Senate. But I'm glad he got through because he's very deserving. He'll be an outstanding member of the bench.
For sure. Thanks for coming on that. We'll come back in just a couple minutes. Matt Schulte and Chris Beckenbauer, joined by Congressman Fortenberry. We got a couple other topics that have been going on up on Capitol Hill we'd like to hear your take on, if you don't mind joining us after the break, Congressman.
Sure, be happy to.
Matt Schulte on Drive Time Lincoln. I've got Chris Beckenbauer with me here in studio, as well as we're joined on the line by Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, who's represented Lincoln area since 2005. We're very fortunate to have such strong representation up on Capitol Hill across the state, but especially from Congressman Fortenberry. We just finished talking about Robert Mueller has been being questioned up on Capitol Hill from members of the House of Representatives. We also talked to them about the confirmation of Bryan Bisher, who is now on the federal bench for Nebraska. Several other topics going on up there too. But Congressman, I think there's one of these is really close to your heart. I noticed there was a security resolution for northern Iraq, as I understood it, to help Christians and Yazidis return to their ancestral homelands. Is that a fair summary? And would you mind commenting on that topic?
That's a fair summary. The deeper issue here is the long-term prospects for peace in Iraq and the principles of civilization itself. And let me explain. About a year ago, at the behest of the Vice President Pence, I went to northern Iraq to evaluate how our aid package was providing relief for what used to be an ancient tapestry of religious traditions in that area. Taking a step back, you might recall in 2014, ISIS, this twisted, dark ideology arose, and they began to try to exterminate Yazidis, who are an ancient faith tradition there in northern Iraq, as well as Christians and certain Muslim minority communities as well. And I always like to point out there was a genocide committed against Yazidis and Christians and other Muslim communities, and the people they killed the most of were innocent Muslims. But nonetheless, the ISIS has been beaten back significantly. They are not defeated completely, but the Iraqi army has now fought valiantly with our help and the help of other coalition partners around the world. And they're a real fighting force, so they're creating a narrative, a glue that holds that country together, and that's a good development. But there's something left to do. We've shifted tremendous aid to the north. Again, this is a personal priority of the Vice President and actually reaches all the way to the Oval Office as well, and we've been working on them significantly in this regard. When I went to northern Iraq, it was very clear, though, that our aid is not sustainable, that the objective of helping people who had to flee, who were caught in refugee camps type situations, who are in what's called a diaspora or dispersed, are never going to be able to return home. Our aid never be sustainable unless there is security. So devising what I believe to be a fairly straightforward and easily implementable plan, it calls for a new security resolution in northern Iraq that integrates these minority communities, Christians and Yazidis and others, into the Iraqi government security forces under the Iraqi central government's flag, so that we get rid of the militias in the area, we get rid of the Iranian meddling that's taking place in the area, we create stabilization, and an opportunity for the right to return. Without that, you're going to have more and more pressure for out-migration, and you will forever lose this, again, pluralism that you actually once had in Iraq. Actually, interestingly, if I could divert for a moment, I know the Iraqi ambassador to America, and he actually went to a college that was founded in Baghdad in 1932 and gave me a book on the founding of that college because it was founded by Jesuit priests. And I was educated by the same religious order at Georgetown University. In 1932, as I recall the book saying, Baghdad had 270,000 Muslim residents, 20,000 Christians, and 70,000 Jewish people. There are 10 Jews left in Baghdad.
My goodness.
10. The Christians are down to about 200,000 from a height of about 1.2 or so million. And, of course, many, many innocent Muslim people have been killed. If you're ever going to have a healthy nationalism in which there's this place for respect and tolerance, you have to be able to integrate differences of religious perspective into normal governance and normal society. That's why this is so critical for Iraq's well-being. It's really the last chapter that we need to write. America has given so much and we've lost so much in Iraq. It's hard to understand why more is needed, but this is really the last chapter for the stabilization of that country and its restoration. And one more key point, I'm so proud of the Yazidi community. The largest Yazidi community in America is actually in Lincoln.
Yes, you're right.
Many of these community members actually served side by side.
I hate to interrupt you here, Congressman, but unfortunately we've got to go to a break.
Okay.
You're right. This topic is very important here locally because of the Yazidi population. Thanks for joining us today.
We're working on it. We're going to get it done. Thank you.